Hi there. In this lecture we see Bobby Fischer against Mikhail Tal in the 1959 Bled Zagreb Belgrade Candidates Tournament, round 13. So e4 from Fischer, we see c5, knight f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, a6, so the Najdorf. And Fischer plays his trademark bishop c4 move. So this originally was called the Sozin attack, but then because of Fischer, Fischer-Sozin attack, crediting Fischer with great games in this variation. So Fischer-Sozin attack. And Tal plays e6. This seems very logical to blunt the bishop. By the way, a bit of trivia for you. Tal's favourite move is bishop g5 here. And very rarely, only like one key game it seems, played bishop c4, but did win with that. So usually Tal's move is bishop g5 in the same position. So Fischer playing bishop c4 though, becoming an exponent of this particular move against the Najdorf. So we see e6, bishop b3, bishop e7, and now f4. There are other options here. This is a little bit committal, this line. An aggressive option is actually, for example, g4, a kind of delayed Keres attack, is an aggressive option to consider. And, there are interesting moves here. h4 is one of them, for example, if white doesn't want to sacrifice anything. There's also a tempting, sacrifice, but that probably, it leads potentially to equality. It's, with queen d5, white's not getting too much compensation there. So anyway, Fischer commits a pawn f4 here. Tal castles, queen f3, and now queen c7 is played. Queen f3 is slightly unusual, by the way. The most often played move in the databases is just the castle. Queen f3 kind of, in a way, it kind of makes black's plan a little bit sometimes more effective if the queen's on that diagonal, has to move again. So castling, does seem to make a bit of sense as well. For example, here, there's an aggressive idea of e5 to drive away the defensive knight quite quickly. And, games being played from this position. It's kind of dynamic and interesting. White's getting quite a scary attack. So there are some games, starting from this position. But anyway, queen f3, we see queen c7. And now white castles b5. And now here f5. This does seem overall to be a kind of slight mistake, letting black get into the driving seat here with the black pieces. So it seems a3 is a lot more cautious, because if black plays b4, where is this knight actually going? Sometimes, if it goes to e2, it's blocking another knight, and then that makes sometimes e5 more effective, potentially. So, a3 seems like it might be almost a necessary move, but after bishop b7, it seems white doesn't have too much. If f5, e5, and here, for example, black gets quite a comfortable position. This is quite a comfortable position for black, to say the least. For example, black's got some easy plans here. There's no big problem here. Okay, white's got a g-file, but overall, black seems to be doing quite well there. But anyway, f5 is played, neglecting a3. So we see a slight downside being revealed, b4, and now this knight decentralizes. A knight on the rim is dim, as they say. It loses support for some key central squares here by going to a4, and Tal is about to exploit that really expertly. If knight ce2, can you see what black plays for 100 points in this position, which is embarrassing? e5. Where is this knight going? It's just the e2 square has been used up. There's no e2, so that's just losing a knight in broad daylight. So, okay, knight a4, and we see e5 here, knight e2, and now bishop b7. It seems a very, very comfortable position for black to have. Knight g3, knight bd7, bishop e3, and now this next move is just absolutely wonderful multi-purpose move. For 200 points, what would you play in this position? There's 1 or 2 points associated with it. Okay, I'm about to reveal a risk-free kind of positional move, bishop c6. In one respect, it's looking at creating a battery, which might also help prepare d5. In another respect, simply about this knight, queen a5 to pounce on this knight. It kind of ties down the rook, because tactically, Fischer's point here with the knight is a3 sometimes comes to the rescue. We see bishop f2. And here, yeah, it's interesting to consider just hitting the knight with queen a5. Before we get into bishop f2, if rook ad1, then queen a5 is a lot more effective if the rook leaves the a file. What to do about the knight then? This is showing that the knight can be lost quite easily. So rook ad1 would be a terrible blunder with respect to the knight. Rook fd1. Then there's queen b7, and what to do about e4. That will be a kind of mistake in respect to e4, that rook move. White's having trouble here, clearly, in this position, for things dropping off, either e4 or a4, it seems. So bishop f2 at least tries to kind of have the option of supporting e4 and also a4. So both of those are not such an issue, but it still means that black can still use the other advantage of bishop c6, which is a slow strategic pawn break in the center with d5. We have queen b7. So just to show now, queen a5 can be almost parried quite efficiently with a3. I say almost. Black is not obliged to take on a4, because a takes b4, and then this is better for white. But it turns out even here, black can actually play just queen b5 and still be, with an advantage. This is a nice position. That knight still fundamentally has wasted a bit of time, and it looks kind of scary to move the knight of a4 sometimes. Move the knight back. So this situation, okay, if the knight gets exchanged off here, black's still doing quite well. A small edge for black at least. But anyway, the bigger point is now just queen b7. So looking at e4, but also looking at this d5 break. So against white's decentralization, black is kind of trying to crash through the center to white's king. That's a typical Tal kind of thing. Anytime Tal's got pieces which are vaguely x-raying king squares, you know that there's going to be potentially a big attack. And we see here rook fe1, and now this liberating d5, so it opens up the bishop, puts more pressure on this diagonal, kind of potentially liberates this bishop on that diagonal. So a very liberational move. E takes, knight takes d5. We see knight e4 trying to keep a lock on things a little bit. If bishop takes d5 instead, for example here, knight e8, this is just unpleasant. There's a big idea potentially of king h8 and knight f6, putting more pressure on e4. So for example here, okay, say like this position, this is not very nice looking at the knight, and say bishop takes e4. Black's going to get a big advantage in these variations. Something's going to drop. For example, c2 dropping there, and a2 potentially. So okay, there's a lot of pressure. So knight e4 was played, and now knight f4, and there is a big idea coming up of knight f6 to put even more pressure on e4, and this looks like a horrendous move to have to play c4 to try and play bishop c2 if needed against this incredible pressure building up. So this looks like it's a total positional disaster for white. Two pieces have now been kind of killed, self-killed in a way. The bishop blunted the knight on the rim, unless the c5 square is going to be handy, if that knight can come back with a vengeance. If king h1 was played, then knight f6 is just really strong. So what would white do here? For example, here we just take there. We're winning the queen, and then bishop takes g2. We were just winning material. So yes, it seems like a very desperate position here. And if after king h1, knight f6, if knight takes f6, check. Okay, it is check. That's the only good thing going for it. But look at this coordination on that killer common square. Tal's broken through to white's king. So, that strategic pawn break just breaks through to the king here. And that's just horrendous. So you can imagine, for example, here, bishop takes g2, and then, ouch, checkmate. So c4, trying to keep a hold on things like the e4 square. But now, how to torture the pin. Black can torture the pin in various ways, but this looks like one of the more effective ways, this next move. So for 100 points, what would you play here with black? Okay. g6. Yeah, that's a great way of torturing the e4 pin. Knight f6 is also decent. If bishop c2, king h8, black's still got an advantage here, but it's not as energetic as g6. So here, white's in meltdown. After f takes, guess what Tal plays here? Okay, f5, that's a great way of torturing the pin. But also even h takes g6, this pin is still, it's going to be exploited. If this is pretty desperate for white to have to play, that's a nice position for black with a big advantage. But this is the most incisive. So g7 is played. If g takes h7 check, then the king can just step here and, the knight's going to drop off, basically. That's not particularly good for white to lose that piece. And there's things like knight d3 after. Okay, so g7 was tried. King takes g7. But now, when the king moves, white's also got this g file. So there's a big crossfire and multiple attacking pieces here. The rook coming to g8, the queen, the rook, the queen, the bishop, and the knight. So quite a lot of attacking pieces here building up. Queen g3 check. The queen doesn't really want to be there after king h8. That's a big tempo gainer now. And also this bishop's been blocked in. So that's kind of free of charge without even losing the exchange, this threat. If knight ec5, for example, knight takes, bishop takes. Well, okay, no, this is actually the game, pardon me. After king h8, knight ec5 is played. This is the game now. We're continuing. But yeah, what does the knight do? Fischer wants to save the knight, but there are incoming threats to intensify the pressure on his king. So he plays knight ec5. So, okay, Tal takes on c5. Bishop takes c5. And in this position, there are some very, very interesting options here. Tal chose a fairly straightforward one. Can you see a great move here, which might be a little bit unexpected? Okay. Bishop takes g2 would be maybe a bit unexpected. It does threaten knight h3, forcing white to give up the queen. So this is horrendous for white. If queen takes f4, this is one of the best shots to try and trick white. But black can play bishop h1, for example, and even though temporarily a piece down, there's too much against white's king. So, for example, queen takes e5 check. This situation, white's king has had it. If that's the best move, queen d5, that's not a good sign. If queen e2, then the white king just really gets in big trouble. For example, here, bang, queen f3 checkmate. So yes, there was a kind of really crushing shot here. Bishop takes g2. So after queen takes f4, if bishop h1, that's crushing, or bishop e4 is also crushing. The white king is too bare here. If queen takes e5, bishop f6, and then check, the white king is far too bare and under fire from many different angles. For example, here is this absolutely crushing for the white king. But the only way for black to actually go wrong in this line is after queen takes f4. The only mistake to make here, the blunder waiting to be made, is this one. That would be a mistake because the rook takes e7 and bishop d4 check, and then all of a sudden it's an advantage for white. So rook f6, knight b6. That's an even position, or it could be an advantage for white rather, if king g7, king g8, rook g7 check, rook g6 check, winning the queen. That's the only way to go wrong. So, but anyway, yeah, it does seem as though a really incisive move here was bishop takes g2. But this is just simple and strong anyway, what Tal played, bishop takes c5 check. So, okay, it seems as though white's got away with, you know, not losing a piece, but his king is in the, you know, fire of the g-file and this diagonal now in the crossfire. We see queen e3, rook a e8, a slight preparation before rook g8 is on the cards potentially. So rook e2 is played. If g3, then knight h3 check and f4, and you can see the king is in meltdown here after knight takes f4 and queen c8. There's too much attacking pressure on that king. For example, knight d3 check stops even king e1, queen g4 check, and you know it's all crashing through. So okay, rook e2 offering an exchange sacrifice. So Tal takes that rook, and now devastating shot, not particularly controversial actually. For 100 points, what would you play with black? Just the crushing shot here. Okay, bishop takes g2. It opens up the king more. It does hit the knight. So we see knight takes a6. If king takes g2, forget the knight for a moment. We can actually throw in this check. And if king f1, in fact, we can forget the knight again. We can play queen c6. This is just devastating. If queen f2, you know, check, and then take on a1, that's crushing. And if queen takes g2 was played after bishop takes g2, rook g8 pins the queen. So okay, there's not too many options. So knight takes a6 was played by Fischer, hitting the queen. We have queen a7 check. So Tal is now, for a moment, a piece down, and he just goes for the king. Actually, doesn't bother with this knight. Rook g8 check here, and now instead of taking knight, queen g7. This has a big threat of mating, you know, after queen h5. So we see bishop d1, but now the final crushing blow is played here. For 100 points, what would you play here? Okay, just rook e6. Yeah, rook left for rook h6. It's very difficult to do anything now. It's impossible to do anything, it seems. So Fischer resigned. If a3, then actually queen g2 check is a neat way of mating here. So like queen takes g2, there's a lawnmower mate pattern. And if king h4, rook h6, and queen takes h2. So yes, a really crushing game. Some key takeaway points. So Fischer's pet 6 bishop c4 move completely destroyed in this game. And it seems Tal played in a fairly risk-free manner. Very logical play to play for a d5 pawn break, liberating his pieces across the center towards the white king, and intensifying the pressure with that g-file as well. The lovely exploitation of the pin with f5 and temporarily, you know, sacking a pawn to open up that g-file meant that there was a really nice crossfire on this diagonal and on that g-file later against white's king. So really beautiful attacking play as kind of very dynamic, aggressive perspective on things like central control to try and break through. Rather, the center is just a tool there, a means to an end to get to the king, breaking through, and that d5 liberational move. Also, you know, the a4 knight, kind of bypassing these technicalities, not going for the material aspects of the position. Tal is more focused on winning the war. So going for the checkmate is like winning the war rather than trying to win a little battle. So that's the big, you know, high stakes thing, to go for the king. And that was echoed towards the end as well, not bothering this knight. So a lot of interesting key takeaway points from this game for attacking chess in general. I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks very much. Hi there. Thanks for getting to the end of the YouTube video. If you would like to see other Mikhail Tal games, I actually have an amazing course for Mikhail Tal, which is currently at 4.9 with over 400 students. You can check this out from the Kingscrusher TV page. So Chess Strategy and Tactics, Mikhail Tal's amazing games. You can check out some free preview videos as well here. If you do expand all sections, you can see the preview links to get some free previews. So I hope you do check out this course index and the free previews. So I really had a thrilling time actually checking out Mikhail Tal's games. So yeah, the YouTube video here you saw was just a sample from this course. I hope you check it out. Okay, thanks so much. Oh, by the way, comments, questions, likes, shares, all appreciated. And if you did get to this part of the video, please do leave some sort of comment like Tal fan. Okay, thanks again.